"9 and 20, Clarice said, in the voice she kept for rooms with mirrors in them. "That is not an age, my dear. That is a verdict." Alaric Renfell, 6th Duke of Ravenhead, had come down to the long room of the Causley Wells Hotel for a dish of tea and the small mercy of being ignored. He leaned his stick against the table leg and did not turn his head. A man who turned his head in a room like this had volunteered for whatever came after. "You needn't say it so gently," another voice answered, lower, unhurried. "I can count. I say it because nobody else will. You are past your prime, Nell. There, it is said, and the world goes on turning." "So it does," said the low voice. "It has had a great deal of practice." Across the table, Gower made a small sound into his cup and studied the ceiling. Alaric allowed himself one glance sideways, which was one more than he had intended. 3 women at the next table under the branch of candles. A handsome girl of 20 in figured muslin, an older woman, upright as a fire iron, in black lace worth more than a curate's year. And beyond them, half out of the candlelight, a woman in grey with her hands folded in her lap and nothing whatever in front of her. The other 2 had soup, a fowl, a dish of buttered crab. The woman in grey had a napkin. "Gower," he said, "is the supper here by subscription?" "It is, your grace." 2 shillings the cover. Subscribed for in advance by name. Then somebody subscribed for 2. It would be 5 months before the Duke of Ravenhead learned what that word of Clarice Dunthorpe's had truly cost the woman in grey, and the learning of it would cost him a great deal more than the hearing had. But that was 5 months off, and just then he only knew that he was hungry and that she was not eating. "Mama has explained it a dozen times," the girl in muslin was saying. "There is a season for everything. Roses in June, offers at 19. One cannot go about in November expecting roses." "One might plant bulbs," said the woman in grey. "Bulbs, they come up in the cold. It is their one accomplishment, and they are not ashamed of it." The older woman set down her fork. "That will do." "Yes, Lady Hortensia. Not Mama, not stepmother." Lady Hortensia, in a tone so perfectly level that Alaric felt it go through him like a draught under a door. 11 inches of candlelight lay between the 2 tables. He measured them. "Waiter," he said. The man came at a run, as men did. "A 3rd cover to that table. Soup, the fowl, whatever is hot. Put it to my account and do not make a speech about it." The plate went down in front of the woman in grey. She looked at it for the length of one breath. Then she looked, without any hurry at all, straight at him. She had a plain, clever, weather-used face and eyes the colour of tea. She was not a beauty. She was, he thought, the only person in that entire room who had not once glanced at the doorway to see who was coming in. "His Grace of Ravenhead," Gower murmured, "has been recognised." Lady Hortensia had risen halfway out of her chair, all black lace and gracious horror. "Your Grace is too good, far too good, but my stepdaughter does not require—" "Then she may leave it," Alaric said. "It is a plate of fowl, madam, not a proposal of marriage." The girl in muslin laughed before she could stop herself and turned it into a cough. The woman in grey picked up her spoon. She ate the way people eat who have been hungry and have decided not to let anybody watch them be hungry, steadily, unhurriedly, finishing everything. When she had done, she folded her napkin into a precise square and said, "Thank you, your grace. It was very good." "You are the first person in Causley Wells to tell me anything I asked about," he said. "The waters are excellent. The company is charming. My knee will be right by Lady Day. Nobody has said one true word to me in 9 days. The waters taste of a coin held too long in a warm hand," she said. "And your knee will not be right by Lady Day, or you would not have chosen the chair nearest the fire and the door both." Gower put his cup down entirely. "Miss," Alaric said. "Prosser, Nell Prosser, Miss Prosser. My man of business tells me that 1100 volumes of my late brother's library are in crates at Ravenhead with no catalogue and no notion of what is in them. He has been telling me so for 2 years. Can you write a clear hand?" "I can write 4, said Nell Prosser. "One of them is my own." "Then, His Grace," said Lady Hortensia, arriving between them like weather, "must not trouble himself. Nell has her duties. She is not at liberty." "I was addressing the lady." "You were addressing my late husband's daughter, who has no fortune, no accomplishments, and no protector but me, and who will be spoken for by me until she has something better. Come, Nell, Clarice, the night air." And the extraordinary thing, the thing that stayed with him, was that Nell Prosser stood up. He caught her at the foot of the stair, which cost him more than he cared to show. The stick took the weight and his temper took the rest. Miss Prosser, one question. Why did you stand up? She stopped on the second step, which put their eyes level, and she did not pretend to misunderstand him. Because I have no character, your grace. I beg your pardon? A written character, from a mistress. No respectable house takes a woman of 29 into it without one, and the only woman living who can write mine is upstairs at this moment telling the chambermaid I ate a stranger's supper. She said it without heat, as a bookkeeper reads a column. I have 4 shillings in the world. My father's papers, his books, his letters, everything of his that remains, are in a locked box in her trunk, and she carries the key on a ribbon at her waist. So when you ask me why I stood up, yes, said Alaric. You are asking me where I would walk to, said Nell Prosser. It is the same question I ask every morning at 5. I have not yet found an answer that does not end in the parish. She went up. He stood at the bottom of the stair for a long time after, with his hand closed hard on the head of his stick, and for the first time in 11 years the Duke of Ravenhead could not think of a single thing that his rank was good for. 30 guineas the quarter, Gower reported the next morning, laying his hat on the breakfast table with the care of a man laying down a dead rat. Paid quarterly, in advance, to Lady Hortensia Dunthorpe, and not to Miss Prosser, to the stepmother. Her ladyship was very clear on the point, your grace. Miss Prosser is a minor-in-law's cousin, so to speak. She has no separate purse. Anything given to her is given to the household, and the household is her ladyship. Then we pay it. Your grace, we are purchasing a woman's labour from a woman who did not earn it. We are purchasing 1,100 books out of 1,100 crates, Alaric said, and if I offer Miss Prosser wages in her own hand the door shuts, and she is sent to a cousin in the north by Christmas. Her ladyship told me so herself, in the manner of a woman explaining a tide. Pay the 30 guineas. Say nothing clever, and Gower, your grace, send the gig for her. The gig came back empty. Nell Prosser walked into the muniment room at Ravenhead at 9:09. Having come the 9 miles by the carrier's cart as far as the lodge, and the last mile and a half on her own feet, with her boots black to the ankle and the hem of her grey stuff gown heavy with water, and she said, "Where would you like me to begin? With telling me why you refused my gig?" Because a gig is an expense, and expenses are entered. She was untying her bonnet with cold fingers, and she did not look up. 30 guineas has been paid to Lady Hortensia for my quarter. Every shilling laid out on me beyond that will be added to what I am said to cost. I have been costing her for 11 years, your grace. I do not intend to cost her a carriage as well. You are wet through. I am. The fire is very welcome. He had them light it at 7:30 every morning after that, and he never once mentioned it, and she never once thanked him for it, and both of these things suited him exactly. The crates were opened in a week. By the second week the long trestle under the north window was covered in her 4 hands. A round upright for the catalogue, a small cramped script for the notes, a copperplate for the fair copy, and a swift slanting scrawl that was, she said, her own and nobody's business. Your brother bought badly, she said on the 9th day. My brother, said Alaric, was reckoned the finest judge of a library in 3 counties. Your brother was reckoned it by the men who sold him the books. She turned a folio round on the trestle. This is as a lion's printing dressed up as a Venice one. The gathering is wrong at the 8th leaf. He paid 240 guineas for it. There are 9 more like it in the 4th crate, all from the same dealer, all in the same 3 years. Gower, at the door, went very still. You are certain. I am certain of the gatherings. I am not certain of the man. She set the folio down. But he signed the receipts, and the receipts are in that drawer, and the same name is on all of them, and if you would rather not know, your grace say so now, and I will catalogue them as Venice and hold my tongue for 30 guineas that I shall never see. The room was quiet enough to hear the rain change direction. Enter them as they are, Alaric said, and write me the 9 names. She was already reaching for the pen. Your steward keeps 2 coal accounts for the almshouses, she said in December. 1 for 11 souls and 1 for 14. There have been 11 souls since your father's time. How long? 6 winters. It comes to £61, and the 11 souls have had the cold end of it. At Christmas, Lady Hortensia brought her party to Ravenhead to view the improvements, which nobody had invited them to view, and Clarice stood in the middle of the long gallery in white velvet and said, "Poor Nell has always had a turn for other people's things, their books, their letters, their houses. It is a sort of gift, is it not, to be so useful in a house one can never be mistress of?" And Nell, without lifting her head from the ledger, said, "It is." "I have catalogued 4,000 volumes this winter, Clarice, and not one of them was mine, and I have found the price of every one. It is a very educating employment. You should try a fortnight of it before you tell Mr. Farthing what your own settlement is worth." Clarice went the colour of the velvet. Lady Hortensia laughed, and said the fire was too much, and had the horses put to within the hour. Afterwards Alaric stood in the empty gallery with the taste of it still on his teeth, and he was ashamed of how much he had enjoyed it, and not ashamed enough to wish it undone. It was in January that he noticed the candle ends. He stood over that saucer for a long while. "Gower," he said at last. "She walks 9 miles in the wet to avoid a shilling on a page she will never read. She has found me £61 and 9 forged books, and she has taken nothing, not so much as a candle end, and she writes down what she does not take. She does, your grace. Why would a woman do that?" Gower, who was an honest man and not a clever one, said, "Because somebody once said she had, your grace, and went out." Alaric stayed where he was, with the saucer in his hand, for a great deal longer than a man ought to stand holding a saucer. "You are staring at my knee again, Miss Prosser." "I am staring at the stairs, your grace. Your knee is only in the way of them." It was the last week of January, and Alaric had come up the great stair badly, and knew he had come up badly, and disliked being seen to. "Say it. The rail is on the wrong side," said Nell. "You take the stick in your right hand and the rail is on your right, so you must choose between them, so you choose neither and you use the wall. A rail on the other side would cost £4 and a joiner's afternoon. My father built that stair. Your father had 2 good knees. He had the joiner in on the Thursday. He'd not tell her he had done it. She came up on the Monday, put her hand on the new rail without a word, and went on to the muniment room, and something in his chest turned over like a page. That was the winter he began to talk. He had not talked in 11 years. He told her about the fall at Enderby Brook, the horse coming over, the surgeon at the inn who had done his honest best by candlelight and had done it wrong, the 6 months on his back. The season in town afterwards, when he had discovered that a duke who cannot dance is a duke everybody speaks of very kindly at a distance. He told her about his brother Hugh, who had bought bad books and good horses and had died of neither, but of a fever in a wet October, leaving him a title he had never once wanted. "You have not asked me whether it pains me," he said one afternoon. "No. Everyone asks. Everyone asks so that you will say no, and then they may stop thinking of it." Nell went on ruling her column. "It pains you in the wet and after stairs and worst at about 4 in the morning, and you have arranged your entire house so that no one shall see it, and you have done that very well, and I am not going to spoil it by admiring you. You are a hard woman, Miss Prosser." "I am an accurate one, your grace. They are frequently confused." "He built the house in Chandos Row," she said, "the first time, the one with the green door. He had it up in the year I was 8, out of the wool trade, and he wrote his own accounts every night of his life at the window on the first floor. He said, 'A man who cannot say where his money is has not got any.'" "And where is it?" "Gone," said Nell. "Lady Hortensia says there were debts." I was 18 and I believed her, because I was 18. She squared the papers. "His books are in the box. That is all I want out of the whole of it, and I have wanted it for 11 years, and she keeps the key on a ribbon." The pressure came in on the 1st of March, in a chaise wearing black lace. "His Grace will forgive an old woman's plain speaking," said Lady Hortensia, seated by the gallery fire and refusing nothing that was offered her. "We quit Causley Wells on the 14th. Clarice is to be married from her aunt's house at Whitsun. Mr. Farthing has been most pressing, and there is a great deal to do. And Miss Prosser is provided for." The smile was perfectly pleasant. My late husband's cousin at Sallow Hutton in Northumberland is 79 and cannot see to read. She requires a woman about her, a gentlewoman of a sober age who will not be running off to be married. Nell goes north on the 14th by the mail. It is settled, and the sum is agreed, and it is very good of them to take her at 9 and 20. Alaric heard the sum before he understood he had heard it. The sum. £40 a year, your grace, and her keep. Paid to whom? To me, said Lady Hortensia, and drank her tea. As her guardian in all but law. Afterwards he found Nell in the muniment room with the north window white behind her, standing quite still with a folio open at a page she was not reading. You heard. Everyone in the house heard, your grace. She has a carrying voice. Sallow Hutton is 260 miles. It is 271. She closed the folio. I looked it up in your brother's road book. It is a house with 4 rooms in use and a lady who cannot see to read, which means she will want reading too, which means it will not be the worst place I have been. Do not look at me like that. I have been a fortnight in the worst place I have been. You will not go. I will go on the 14th of March by the Northern Mail, said Nell, because on the 13th I shall have 4 shillings and no character, and on the 15th I shall have neither, and there is no third thing, and we have both known that since the night you bought me a plate of fowl. Marry somebody, she laughed. It was the first time he had heard it, and it was not a happy sound, and it went into him like the cold off the window. There it is, she said. 9 and 20, past her prime. Marry somebody, Miss Prosser, anybody, the thing is easily done. Your grace, in 11 years no man in this county has offered me so much as an umbrella, because a woman without a portion is a debt, and a woman without a portion at 9 and 20 is a debt nobody expects to be paid. Clarice was quite right at that supper table. She is stupid, but she was right, and I would rather hold it plainly at the mirrors than kindly at a fireside. She picked up her pen. 13 days, she said. I shall have your catalogue finished, and the 9 names and the £61 proved. I do not leave work half done. The 14th of March. He stood there and heard the date settle into the room like frost onto glass. It is finished, Nell said, on the 10th of March, and set the fair copy on the trestle. 412 pages, ruled, indexed, 4,106 volumes, in a hand a printer would have envied. Alaric turned the first leaf, and the second, and could not have said afterwards what was on either of them. Stay, your grace, hear the whole of it before you answer. Librarian to the house, at £60 a year paid into your own hand at the bank at Marbury, in your own name, on the first Monday of the quarter. The keeper's cottage at the west gate, which has 4 rooms and a pump and a door that locks, and the key of it is yours and not mine, and I will never in my life ask for it. Coals, a woman to do for you, and the whole of that library to be answerable to nobody but you, including me. She stood very still. Why? Because you found £61 of stolen coal for 11 old people I have never troubled to visit, he said. Because you told me my stair was on the wrong side. Because in 5 months you have not once told me a comfortable lie, and I did not know until you came what it had cost me, living among people who tell me nothing else. The fire moved. Outside March was throwing rain at the north window in handfuls. Ask me on the 13th, said Nell at last, and her voice was not quite level, and she heard it and cleared her throat. I have 2 days' work left, and I will not answer a thing like that with work in front of me. Miss Prosser, ask me on the 13th, she said. And your grace, thank you for the rail. She would say no. She would say no because of the sum, and the 14th, and the North Country cousin who had already agreed the price of her. Take away the obstacle, he reasoned, and she is free to answer freely. So he sent for Lady Hortensia, and he paid her. He paid her £400, the Sallow Hutton engagement bought out, the 10 years of £40 capitalized and rounded up and handed over. And Lady Hortensia signed a paper releasing all claim upon the person and services of her late husband's daughter, and Alaric read it twice for the wording, and never once thought about what wording was. He had gone in for a quarter of an hour, because the county expected it, and because he was in a mood to be seen doing a generous thing. Nell had come with the Dunthorpes to hand Clarice's shawl and hold Clarice's cup, as she had for 11 years. and Lady Hortensia in the middle of the tea room in black lace, with 40 people at the tables and the candles very bright, laid a hand on Nell's arm and said, in the voice that carried, "You may put down the cup, my dear. You are no longer mine to send for. His Grace of Ravenhead has bought you of me this morning for £400, and dear Nell, at 9 and 20, I call that the best price any woman in this room will ever fetch." Somebody laughed. Somebody else did not, which was worse. Alaric was across the room in 11 strides, and every one of them was too late. Nell Prosser did not go red. She went perfectly, terribly composed, the way she had gone at the supper table with nothing in front of her. "Is it true?" she said. "Nell, is it true, your grace? £400. Paid to her, this morning. It is true, and it was done to free you. It was done without me." She said it quietly. Not one person in that room could have heard it, and every one of them heard it. 11 years I have been a line in that woman's accounts. Board, keep, and no wages. And this morning, without one word to me, with my catalogue lying finished on your trestle, you found out what I was worth to her and you paid it. You did not ask me. You settled me. You have made me the one thing in 11 years that nobody has ever quite dared to call me aloud. And you have done it in a room with a subscription list at the door. That is not what I know it is not what you meant. Her voice cracked once, and she took hold of it. That is the whole of the trouble. She priced me for 11 years and never paid a farthing. You paid, your grace. You are the only person who ever put a figure to me and honored it. And now every soul in this county will know the figure, and they will be quite right, because you and she agreed it between you over a paper I was not shown. Lady Hortensia, enjoying herself very much, said, "Come, Nell, you are bought and you are paid for, and you may go where you please. Here." She unhooked the little key from the ribbon at her waist and dropped it on the tea table with a clink. "Take the wretched box. Your father's papers, since you have whined for them since you were 18. There is nothing in it but a dead man's arithmetic, and I am sick of the sight of the thing." Nell picked up the key. She looked at it a moment. Then she looked at Alaric, and there was no anger in her face at all, which he found he could not bear. "You asked me to answer you on the 13th, she said. "You have answered for me on the 11th. Good night, your grace." She went out through the tea room with her back straight and did not hurry. He sent to Chandos Row at 8 the next morning, and at 9 and at noon. She had gone at 5 before it was light on the carrier's cart to Marbury, with one box and one bandbox and the black japanned case that had stood in Lady Hortensia's trunk for 11 years, and she had left on the trestle at Ravenhead the fair copy, the 9 names, the £61 proved to a farthing, and one folded sheet in the swift slanting hand that was her own and nobody's business. Account of Nell Prosser with Duke of Ravenhead, it said. 5 months' work rendered. 1 rail, £4. Coals and a plate of fowl, 6 shillings and 9 pence. Paid in full and nothing owing on either side. There was no direction on it. She had not told him where she was going. Marbury, Gower said on the 4th day. "That much is certain, your grace. The carrier set her down at the Ram at 7 in the morning. After that the town closes over a person like water. Then open it. I have tried the coaching inns, the 2 respectable lodging houses and the parish clerk. Your grace, forgive me. A woman who has been sold in a tea room in front of 40 people does not leave a direction with the parish clerk." Alaric spent 11 days in Marbury. He was a duke with a stick and a name, and he found that both were useless, because the one thing he could not do was the thing he most wanted, which was to walk into a room and demand her back, and he understood at last, standing in the rain in Bridge Street. That demanding her back was precisely the crime. He found her on the 12th day, and he found her by accident, through a window. The counting-house of a linen draper in the shambles, a high desk, a mean fire, 4 clerks. And at the end of the row, on a stool in the grey stuff gown, with her sleeves pinned back and her hair coming down and the light of a tallow candle on her face at 4:30 in the afternoon, Nell Prosser, adding up a column of somebody else's money. He did not go in. He learned the rest afterwards in pieces, the way a man learns what he has cost. She had gone to 7 counting houses in 9 days. 5 had told her at the door that they did not employ women. The 6th had offered her a different sort of arrangement, and she had left without answering it. The 7th, a linen draper with 3 sons and a bad memory for figures, had said he would give her a week 11 shillings, and she had found in that week a 4-year error in his tare weights worth £90. And on the Saturday he had raised her to a guinea and asked whether she had a sister. She had a room over a stationer's in Cordwainer Lane, one window, a bed, a table, and on the table the black japanned case with the key in it. She had not written to Ravenhead. She never did. The advertisement appeared in the Marbury paper on the last Tuesday in March, between a sale of timber and a notice about a strayed mare, to be sold by auction at the White Hart, Causley Wells, on Thursday the 3rd of April, that substantial and well-built dwelling known as No. 4, Chandos Row, with the fixtures, the garden and the coach house, by direction of Lady Hortensia Dunthorpe, who is quitting the county. Alaric read it twice and sent his horse to be saddled, and then, halfway across the yard, stopped, and stood in the wet with his hand on the animal's neck for a full minute, and told Gower to have the gig instead, and to take the back road, and to say nothing to anybody. He was not going to rescue her. He had already tried that once, with £400, in a room full of candles. He went to stand at the back. The long room at the White Hart held perhaps 60 people. County, the curious, 2 attorneys, a builder from Marbury, Clarice in a new bonnet, and Lady Hortensia in the front row with her hands folded like a woman at a christening. The auctioneer had got as far as £390 when the door at the back opened, and Nell Prosser came in out of the rain with a black japanned case under arm. She did not make a scene. That was the terrible dignity of it. She walked up the side of the room, between the chairs in her wet grey gown, and every head turned, and at the front she stopped, and quite clearly, "You must stop the sale, sir. The house is not Lady Hortensia's to sell." The auctioneer laughed. The room laughed with him, in the loose, ugly way of rooms. "And who does the lady say it belongs to?" "To me," said Nell. "And I have brought the paper, and the attorney in Bridge Street who drew it, and I will not take a minute of anybody's time that I do not need." Lady Hortensia rose, and for the first time in 5 months Alaric saw her face do something she had not planned. "She is not well," she said to the room. "My poor stepdaughter has had a great disappointment." "Nell, sit down. My father built this house in the year I was 8, Nell said. Her voice never rose. "He wrote his accounts at the first-floor window every night of his life. When he was dying he sent for his attorney and paid him 9 guineas, and the entry is here, in his own hand, on the 4th of November. To my attorney for the drawing of my will and the settlement upon my daughter. 9 guineas. I have had these books for 3 weeks. It took me 1 evening to find it, and 11 years to be given the key." The old attorney came forward from the doorway with a deed box under his arm, and the room went so quiet that the rain on the White Hart windows sounded like applause. "The settlement of Josiah Prosser, gentleman of Chandos Row," he read, "the freehold dwelling aforesaid, together with the sum of £6,000 in the 4% annuities, to be held in trust by his widow, Lady Hortensia Dunthorpe, for the sole use and benefit of his daughter, Eleanor Prosser, and to be paid over to her absolutely upon her attaining the age of 25. He lowered the paper. "Miss Prosser was 25, he said, 4 years ago last Candlemas." Nobody laughed then. Alaric stood at the back of the room with his hand shut hard on the head of his stick, and he thought, with a sort of cold clarity, of a woman walking 9 miles in the rain to save a shilling on a gig. 4 years. 4 years of standing behind Clarice's chair with a shawl. 4 years of no supper because the subscription was for 2. 11 years of being told there had been debts, and a plate of fowl bought for her by a stranger, and £400 paid over a paper she was not shown, for a woman who had owned the house they were all sitting in, and £6,000 in the funds, since the winter she turned 25. "You knew," Nell said to Lady Hortensia. "It was not a question. Every quarter day you knew." "An account will be required," the old attorney said into the silence, "of every quarter's income since Candlemas 4 years ago. That is the law, madam, and it is not a hard law, and it will be applied." Lady Hortensia sat down very slowly, and the black lace, which had frightened a whole county for 11 years, was suddenly only lace. "I meant to tell her," she said, "when she was settled, when she was suitably married. A woman of that age with £6,000, the men who would have come for it, Some of them might have been honest, said Nell. You never let me find out. Then the Duke of Ravenhead came up the side of the room. 60 people watched him do it, and he did it badly, because the floor of the White Hart is uneven and his knee had had a wet April, and he had decided somewhere on the Marbury Road that he was not going to be spared any part of this. Sir, you are not a party, the auctioneer began. I am the man who bought her, said Alaric. The room stopped. 3 weeks ago, in the tea room at Causley Wells, in front of Fortiview, it was announced that I had paid £400 to Lady Hortensia Dunthorpe for Miss Prosser's release. That is true. I did pay it. I paid it in the morning without telling her, over a paper she was not shown, and I told myself I was setting her free. He looked round the room, unhurried, and let them all be looked at. I was not. I was making the arrangement comfortable for me. Every one of you laughed in that room, or heard the laughing and said nothing, and I have said nothing at rather a higher price than the rest of you, so I will say it now. She had done 5 months of the best work I have ever paid for. She had found £61 stolen from 11 old people in my almshouses, and I looked at her and I saw a difficulty to be settled instead of a woman to be asked. He set a folded paper down on the auctioneer's table. The release deed. It is hers to burn if she pleases. The £400 is not to be repaid to me by anybody, and I will bring an action against any person who says it was a loan. Miss Prosser, I offered you a post and a cottage in March. I withdraw them. You have a house of your own, said Alaric, and £6,000, and a head that could run this county better than the men who do. You do not want my cottage, you never did. I have nothing whatever to offer you that you have not already got, and that is the first honest position I have stood in since the night I sent a plate of fowl to your table. Nell Prosser looked at him for a long moment with her father's ledger held against her, and did not smile and did not weaken. That will do for a beginning, your grace, she said. And she turned back to the auctioneer and said, There will be no sale today, sir, and I am sorry for the gentlemen who have come in from Marbury in the wet. He did not write to her. It was the hardest thing he had ever done, and he did it for 9 weeks. She had the green door in Chandos Row painted, and her father's desk carried up to the first-floor window, and a small brass plate screwed to the gate-post that said, in letters the whole of the Wells could read on their way to the pump room, E. Prosser, accomptes. By June she was keeping the books of the linen draper in Marbury, 2 corn factors, the White Hart itself, and, to the joy of every gossip in the county, the Causley Wells Subscription Assembly, whose tea-room list she now personally engrossed. Lady Hortensia rendered her account. It came to £1,140, and she had not got it, and Clarice's marriage went forward on a settlement 3/4 smaller than the one that had been talked of, and the whole county knew it. It was Nell who allowed her £120 a year out of the trust, for life. That is more than she deserves, Alaric said when he heard. It is exactly what she allowed me, said Nell. Board, keep, and no wages, and she called it generous every quarter day for 11 years. I shall not call it generous. I shall only pay it. There is a difference, and she will have 30 years to think about what it is. On the 13th of June, the Duke of Ravenhead came to the green door in Chandos Row with his hat in his hand, having sent up no card, and having practiced nothing. You told me once to ask you on the 13th, he said. I asked on the 11th instead, and you have had 3 months of my not asking, so I hope you will allow that I can be taught. Come up, said Nell. The stair is narrow and the rail is on the left, and I had it put there in April, and I have been very cross about it ever since, because I could not think of a single reason to tell the joiner why. He got up it holding the rail, which was on the correct side, and she stood at the top of it in a green gown with ink on her second finger, at 29, past her prime, and the whole of the light off the Wells came in at her father's window behind her. Miss Prosser, he said, I have no offer to make you. You have a house, a fortune, a profession, and the best hand in the county. I have a bad knee, 4,000 books you have already read, and a great deal to be sorry for. I am asking whether you would consider being my wife, on any terms you care to write yourself, and if it takes you until you are 35 to answer, I shall be at the bottom of the stair. You would be very tired, said Nell. I would be there. She took his hand, and she was not gentle about it, and she said, "Then you had better come and see the accounts, Alaric, 'cause I do not marry a man whose ledgers I have not seen." They were married at Causley Wells in September, from the house her father built, and the 11 old souls of the Ravenhead almshouses came in a wagon with their coals paid up to Michaelmas. The catalogue of the Ravenhead Library stands in the muniment room still 412 pages, and on the title page, in a swift slanting hand that was her own and nobody's business, it says, "Made by Eleanor, Duchess of Ravenhead. In the winter she had nothing else to do.